Hi, I'm Tejaswini Joshi, a PhD student at Pennsylvania State University, and I'll be presenting the paper, The Flaky Accretions of Infrastructure, Socio-Technical Systems, Citizenship, and the Water Supply on behalf of myself and my advisors, Dr. Jeffrey Badzel and Dr. Shawan Badzel. But before we start our conversation about the paper, I would like to introduce you to Alka Tai from Nikhil Anand's book, The Hydraulic City. He narrates, Alka Tai explained to me that her water problems did not have to do anything with the lack of water in her pipes. There is water, she insisted. To demonstrate this, she began sucking water out of the pipe in the washing room, a human pump. As Alka Tai's experience might suggest, this paper is about the interactions between the water supply in cities and the urban inhabitant. Such interactions are especially important since visions of smart cities, smart homes, and connected communities have become prevalent technology themes in recent years. But what does water even mean? While we might think of water as a colorless, transparent, odorless liquid that forms the seas, lakes, rivers, rains, etc., civilization has transformed the ways in which we understand water. What was once a natural resource is now the content of a network of reservoirs, tanks, and pipes. We can in fact conclude that water is now an infrastructure. This transformation of water into infrastructure has also transformed the meaning of using water. Water use is now surrounded by techno and biopolitics, and this is visible through people's everyday interactions with the water supply. Such everyday interactions have gained recent attention in CSCW and social computing research, particularly to use digital technology to democratize participation. The urban user, they argue, may be someone like Alka Tai, transforms and is transformed by interactions with the city's infrastructures through a process known as infrastructuring. Similarly, CSCW research has also emphasized the importance of prioritizing the citizen-situated interactions in the city and finding innovative actions in the gaps, cracks, and fissures of larger socio-technical systems. Thus, in the present work, we argue that one way to do all of this is to focus on understanding what being a citizen entails from the perspective of hyperlocal micro-interactions in the city. We draw on Nikhil Anand's concept of hydraulic citizenship to help us locate the co-emergence of citizenship and infrastructure in the micro-interactions that constitute everyday life. So when we think of citizenship, we might think of it as a linear process to acquire legitimate access to a country or a city. And when we sort of map that to hydraulic citizenship, we might imagine something like this, like a straight line. But according to Anand, hydraulic citizenship is non-linear and iterative. It is an ongoing process. So in reality, it almost looks something like this, a bit chaotic. It is highly dependent on the social histories, the material conditions of water infrastructures, and the politics of water distribution in the cities. This is especially true when the water situation is unreliable and precarious, like that in India. So, drawing from all of this, we can say that it takes a significant amount of work to become and remain a hydraulic citizen. Thus, in the present work as CSCW researchers, we set out to ethnographically capture this very significant work that the residents of Pune, India have undertaken to become and remain hydraulic citizens. Our goal was to find new ways of imagining the relationship between people and technology in the context of smart cities and urban informatics. We collected data in Pune through ethnographic observations and interviews, autoethnography by the lead author, media collection and analysis of newspapers and blog posts. In Pune, despite best efforts, the city cannot reliably provide water services to every resident. It's a city of contrast, towering buildings with elaborate piped water infrastructures and old makeshift houses that store water in chemical drums and such. We thus collected our data against this rich backdrop of Pune city. After collecting the data, we then used an iterative interpretive process to discuss and refine themes in a mutually informing dialogue with Anand's concept of hydraulic citizenship. As an outcome of this dialogue, following three themes emerged, and we look into each one of them. So the first is hydraulic infrastructures, which can be defined as socio-material assemblages which are brought into being through relationships with human bodies, discourses, and other things. And there are also processes always in formation and always coming apart. But to really understand this, let's look at an example, my own experience with the hydraulic infrastructures. So to fill water, oftentimes the water flow will suddenly stop and then start again with even more force. Sometimes it will trickle, take an eternity to fill my water filter. So at that time, I would think maybe someone from the lower level floors might be filling the drinking water, and the minute they close the tap, the pressure is redirected towards my house on the topmost floor of the apartment. Thus, infrastructures become alive, change and evolve to people's everyday rhythm and practices, and thus form the flaky accretions of socio-material processes. Sometimes as a result of these processes and makeshift ways, informal ad hoc infrastructures also become a part of water supply. While we might call these measures as informal to distinguish them from the state-governed, documented, and top-down provisions, the boundaries between informality and formality are often blurry. Informal measures include the tanker mafia, borewells, and even some personal measures such as buckets and agents to clean the caustic deposits. This goes on to show that the residents are constantly looking at ways in which they can experience some relief from these struggling interactions with the water infrastructures. So then what does the experience of lack of water look for the city residents? To capture that, the next theme we derived is lived experiences through water. By that we mean the phenomenological account of experiencing the city through daily practices of using water. In the case of Pune, the residents adjust and make changes to their routine. I had to change my bathing routine to navigate around these issues. It's almost as though we don't experience the lack of water. It's almost as if less water and a broken infrastructure fades from our perception. One commentator on a newspaper article took this to another extreme. He said, why do we even want 24 hours of water? So such kind of fading in the background, from a design standpoint, we are left with a situation where the experiences of hydraulic citizenship in Pune are not what we as researchers and designers might assume them to be. Water provided every other 2 days is enough water. Is it really enough? And maybe it means that we need to focus on people's agency in using their public service. But when we talk about agency, we need to turn to legitimacy. So we can define legitimacy as the ability of the resident to be recognized as the rightful participant in the city's water distribution services. But it's not just about the strict legalities of the matter, it also includes the judgments about what is earned or what is deserved, because the infrastructures are sometimes too rigid to work properly. So while a senior engineer we spoke to is very excited about the new automatic water meters, this does not mean that the high-tech solution is going to solve the problems we saw so far. This is because there's almost a tug of war between the municipality and the residents, a competition to one-up each other's legitimacy. For example, a newspaper article reports how the municipality threatens to seize the house of a resident for non-payment of tax. But the reason he did not pay the tax is because he claims the city does not actually supply him with water. He sources his own water from the tankers, therefore government cannot take tax from him. Similarly, another article describes how residents asserting their own agency remove new automatic water meters installed by the municipality. So the question that arises out of this disagreement and the preceding example then is, how do smart city designers even make space to create trust for ICTs and digital technologies? In Pune, many residents believe that such interventions are an unnecessary overhead and sometimes even an infringement on their privacy. What might seem to be obvious problems, the lack of reliable water, an obvious improvement, the improvement of metering systems, are locally interpreted very differently than what we might expect. So what does this mean for us technologists? We can say that jugaads and other workarounds are cultural resources over which residents have mastery and agency, something they feel that technology might even take away. This picture of Pune city is much different than tacit Western biases. In fact, it taught us that Starr's notion of infrastructural breakdown has a new meaning in situations such as Pune. In fact, Pune's infrastructure is always in a state of breakdown. The work done by the city residents, however, makes it look like infrastructure regained, a situation where the infrastructure has receded from the residents' awareness. Thus, we argue that we need to dismantle dated assumptions about natural monopolies, avoid defining citizenship solely in terms of subjectivization, and recognize that citizenships diversely engage in the collective work of accessing and managing the resources needed to sustain life.